I am Zoe Delahunty-Light, and I've been playing Enshrouded on my Steam Deck all weekend. I am utterly addicted to it, so this Enshrouded review is to assure you that yes, Enshrouded is one hell of a game and why you should seriously consider picking it up. I'll say right up front that Valheim's fingerprints are all over Enshrouded, but Enshrouded has built upon mechanics you'll be familiar with from Valheim to bring them to a whole new level, and I love it. Enshrouded is a solo/multiplayer crafting survival fantasy RPG where you, a Flameborn, have been woken from effectively suspended animation to rid the land of Embervale of the Shroud, a corrupting influence that led the world to ruin a long time ago. To eradicate the Shroud, you'll need to have adequate resources, whatever form that might take. One of my favourite things about Enshrouded, and trust me, I have a lot, is that the skill tree is varied and nuanced. There's not just mage, fighter, archer here. You've got skills tailored to the beastmaster, trickster, survivor, athlete, tank, battle mage, healer, and many more. With up to 16 players, it means that you could all choose a different skill path and archetype, and I'd argue that classes like healer are specifically made for multiplayer gameplay. Enshrouded has a slower, gradual tech tree than I'm used to. I've played Valheim, Palworld, Blue Oak Bridge, Sunhaven, Sons of the Forest, just so many crafting games, and never has it taken me 20 hours to find copper. But when I did, I was thrilled. The fact that it takes a while to find basic ores means that you have to intentionally explore Embervale, as you're not served up ores on a platter in the opening area. And exploring the world means more enemies, which means more leveling up, which means going to harder areas and finding stronger resources. Also, I've never been so happy to find clay and amber in all my life. Enshrouded pumps the brakes on you, and in doing so, I felt way more invested in that marksmanhood I wanted so badly. Another thing I take for granted in survival games? The wildlife not being one of the biggest threats. Boars and bees terrorise me in Enshrouded, and are just as dangerous as the scavengers and hollows, especially when they hide in caves to scare the bejesus out of me. Whoever designed Enshrouded's enemies, and specifically their placement, has definitely played Dark Souls. That's not because they're hard to kill, they're not really, but because enemies are hidden in the dark, in corners of rooms, behind a door you open, next to explosive barrels just waiting for a wayward arrow. I have learned to check every corner of a room before I loot it, as I've been caught off guard way too many times. All of these roadblocks contribute to the Shroud starting off as, and remaining, quite an intimidating space to explore. Time in the Shroud is limited, and gradually increases the more you level up your base, more on that in just a bit. Within the Shroud are corrupted enemies, treasure, ruined towns, and Shroud-tainted resources that you need for stronger upgrades. Spend too much time in the Shroud and you die. Lanterns allow you to restart your timer, but are rare and found only in the most precarious areas. But there's also levels of Shroud. Some areas will kill you in seconds if your base isn't a high enough level, feeding right back into Enshrouded's base building / exploration component. A small tangent here. To eradicate parts of the Shroud, you have to chop down its protected core with an axe, rather than killing a big bad, which I way prefer, as it feels more like I'm rooting out the corruption from the earth. It's very cathartic as well. Let's talk about your base, or bases, as you can simultaneously build multiple ones across Embervale. These act as fast travel points, and if you don't want to manually construct entire buildings, let me tell you one of the things about Enshrouded that made me so happy. All those ruins in the wild, the abandoned pubs, villages, farms, towns, you can claim them as your own. You can plonk your flame altar, the heart of your base, in front of the building, and then you have a prefabricated stronghold. Sure, there may be some broken walls and skeletons, but I do not care. I'm prepared to make sacrifices for home ownership. All that is to say that although Embervale is ruined, ravaged, dead, there's plenty of life left in the decaying buildings. I found farms with functional vegetable gardens, hamlets around ore veins, and the skeletons of former inhabitants, but needless, it still makes me really grateful to see the fact that some buildings are still standing. Enshrouded, being a hybrid game, places just the right amount of emphasis on the survival element. A formidable rested buff applies when you've slept somewhere warm, sheltered and comfortable, warranting your regular return to base to renew said buff. I'm the kind of person where I will turn into a dirty, feral, never-slept-once adventurer if the game lets me. I think I slept once in Skyrim, and that was only because I had to trigger the Dark Brotherhood storyline, so this nudge to keep returning to base feeds into Enshrouded's role-playing element. A buff also applies when you've recently consumed fruit, meat and water, giving you up to double the health and stamina you'd usually have. Then there's another buff called On the Road that only applies when you stick to the road, which I love because then you're drawn towards landmarks deliberately placed near said road when infrastructure used to exist in Embervale before the ruin. This also means that it semi-disincentivizes the Skyrim way of exploring, where you just try and climb over every single mountain in your way, and I really enjoyed having that extra incentive to stick to the paths like the developers wanted me to. Upon returning to base, you can check in with your craftspeople because you are not alone in Enshrouded, even if you play it solo. Craftspeople are NPCs with specific skills, alchemist and blacksmith, for example, that you revive from their own flame-born tombs, who can craft you bits and bobs for your adventures and give quests. Sometimes they'll ask you to check in on their old villages, or find their personal items like a crucible or hand spindle, which will unlock more crafting recipes in turn. On the topic of quests, Enshrouded doesn't stop you from uncovering quests that are way too high level for you. The game, like Valheim, lets you decide whether you want to challenge yourself with an area 5 levels above your own, which I have done, and been humbled fairly quickly. The only limiting factor when it comes to exploration is your audacity, or your common sense, each to their own. Notes scattered across Embervale also give quests and mark locations on your map, and when I tell you some of them made me laugh out loud, well, I'm telling you. In lieu of NPCs out in the wild, these notes are there to add personality to the ruined realm, and they succeed. You'll be forced out from your base not only to find resources, but to unlock fast travel to these huge, ancient spires. While getting to the towers requires a lot of ammo and health, getting to the top of said towers calls for smarts. Puzzles on each floor prevent you from getting to the hallowed fast travel point right at the tippy top, so when you fought your way through various enemies, you get some breathing space, yes, but are still challenged in a different way nonetheless. Not the least because there are spikes and electric balls trying to mess you up. I really like this change of pace, not only because I love puzzles, but also because it made more sense that an ancient civilization would protect their fast travel points with puzzles, rather than somehow these ravagers, scavengers making their way up there. And that is my Enshrouded review. As time goes on and the developers release updates like new biomes and enemies, as Enshrouded is in early access at the moment, I'll be revisiting this review and posting my updated thoughts in video format, so if that sounds like something you'd want to watch, feel free to subscribe to Eurogamer and drop a like on this video, as that gives me an indication of where the Enshrouded updates would be helpful. For those of you who are playing Enshrouded, what do you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. Also, apologies if my voice sounded weird in this video. I'm coming off of a week-long flu, so my throat is still not happy with me, but thank you for listening to me all the same. Thanks so much for choosing to spend your time with me, and now I'm going to go and move my craftspeople into co-opted ruined village bases that I find across the realm, so I'll see you folks next time.